Harris is, I think unless you're living under a rock, there's been such an uproar over this. It would be hard not to know what's happening. But before we do that, I want to set the table for why it's really important to understand this, right? The only way for an economy to work is when people are willing to gamble their money to invest in small to medium-sized businesses, when they're willing to invest in new ideas, when they're willing to invest in real estate, when they're willing to invest in real estate development. In order for those things to have to happen, there has to be, the juice has to be worth the squeeze. Because they know there's risk involved. If you've ever been a business owner, like you and I have been since essentially we were born, and lots of our listeners are, every time we make a decision, we weigh out the risk versus reward. I'm about to set aside 50 grand this month for a marketing campaign that I'm going to put into play for myself. I've weighed out the risk versus reward. And when it doesn't go right, it really, really sucks. So investors have to feel like there's something there for them. Now, if you're an investor, here's some stats right now after the last 4 years that are really interesting because people love stats. You ready for this, Andrew?
I'm ready.
Number one, U.S. job additions have revised lower by 818,000.
I caught that yesterday. I'm glad you brought that up, man. Good
Right?
call. That was not on my list here. Keep going.
This is the largest revision since 2009. Okay. Number two, ready for the next one?
By the way, I'm pulling that up. Remind me to come back to your number one. Very important. Go.
Sure. Okay. U.S. unemployment rate is up to 4.3%, highest since 2021. Okay. Highest since 2021. 5 out of the last 6 job reports have now been revised lower. Okay. 5 out of the 6 last job reports have been revised lower. Record number of Americans are now working multiple jobs. US dollar has lost 25% of its purchasing power in just 4 years. And here's the one that really, we were talking about this on one of our last shows, Andrew. 11% of credit card balances in the US right now are delinquent, the highest in over a decade.
You did bring that up in an episode ago.
Okay. Does that sound like a strong economy right now?
That sounds like a borderline depression right now to me, Aaron.
Okay. So if that doesn't sound like a good economy to you, do you think it's a good idea to make things look less enticing for people to invest their money into businesses, less money into the economy, less money into hiring new people, less money into innovation, less money into really anything business oriented? Do you think it's a good idea to make it more risky and less enticing for people to invest right now, considering the current circumstances?
Common sense question, common sense answer.
I would say it's a common sense answer. So what we saw last week is the one that really got people rattled.
Yeah.
Is potentially a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains. Now, if you don't know what capital gains are when you invest in something and then you sell it. The difference between what you bought it for and then what you sold it for, that difference is your capital gain. That's basically how much you grew it, and it's worth more now than when you got it.
Right.
So there's always been taxes on capital gains in the US and Canada and in most of the civilized world. But what is being potentially introduced is for people over $100 million in net worth, a 25% tax on unrealized capital gains.
Now, this is the Grant Cardone video we talked about, right?
Correct. So unrealized capital gains means, for example, just for this, the average person will understand this example. If you have a house and the housing market goes through a boom, which it tends to go boom, flat, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you have $1 million house and then there's a boom and then all of a sudden your house is worth, on paper, $1.5 million. You now have an increase of $500,000. The government wants to tax you 25% of that 500,000, which would be 125,000, just because you now own an asset that's worth more than it was before. You didn't sell the house, you just own the house. And the idea behind this is what they say they're trying to curb is the ultra rich owning shares in their own companies. And instead of actually paying themselves salaries or selling their shares to fund their lifestyle, one of the tricks that the ultra wealthy use is they go and they get loans from banks against their shares, because you don't have to pay taxes on loans. You only pay taxes on income. So it's kind of this like sneaky loophole, which I get. So I understand that that's the loophole that they're trying to shut. And I understand that when most people would listen to this, they'd say, oh, it's only for people over 100 million. Who cares? They're ultra with. We don't care. Okay. As somebody who lives in the Cayman Islands in a tax-free domicile, about once every 5 years, some goofball gets a good idea and says, how about we just tax people 1%? Let's just tax people or corporations or expat 1%, nothing crazy, just one. Okay. The corporations here, they literally look at the government and they say, try me. Put 1% in and we will walk out the door. We will go to the Isle of Man. We will go to Nevis. We will go to Panama. We will go wherever, because we know in the history of the government, the moment that they open the door and they say 1%, 1% becomes 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 50, 60, whatever it is, just like it happened in the United States. Remember, income tax was a temporary war measure and it was very small. And all of a sudden, away it goes. So taxing people on something they haven't actually even sold yet, it's just paper money. Oh, and by the way, if you do that, that could work in the stock market too, right? If the stock market goes down, you don't get a refund. So if the stock market went up and you got taxed on unrealized capital gains, but you hadn't sold anything, and then the stock market goes down, oh, you don't get any money. You only get taxed on the way up. You don't get any refund on the way down. So now you're actually killing the foundation of investing, because the foundation of investing is I put money into the market, I don't take any out, I let it compound. Compound growth is exponential. Now you're going to take the compounding element out. It would almost be like if your broker said, I'm taking 25% of your profits for being part of my.
That's how hedge funds work, buddy.
Yeah.